Hello and welcome to my personal fanfic. This story is part of my creation to rewrite the story of Twilight from an alternate universe. Some events change, some do not. All credit of the original Twilight Saga novels are written by Stephenie Meyer. She was a great inspiration for this retelling. Now to part 1 of I don't know how many videos. Audiobook 1. The Twilight. A fanfic retelling by Bo C.
I'd never given much thought to how I would or would not die, though I'd had reason enough in the last few months, but even then, I would not have imagined for something like this. I stared without a gasp for breath across the long room, into the dark eyes of a creature distressed by hunger, as he looked pleasantly back at me. Surely it was a strange way to die, in the place of history, with someone I became engrossed by. Noble, if not at times childish, even. That ought to count for something, right? I knew that if I'd never gone to Forks, I wouldn't be facing death now. When life offers you a scenario so far beyond any practicality, it's not unreasonable to grieve when it comes to an end. It was an interesting case of scenarios, for sure. The creature smiled in a familiar way as he sauntered forward to kill me. Chapter 1. My mother drove me to the airport with the windows rolled down. It was 75 degrees in Phoenix, the sky a perfect, cloudless, warm blue. I was wearing my favorite sleeveless shirt, white eyelet lace. I was wearing it as a farewell gesture. In the Olympic Peninsula of Northwest Washington State, a small town named Forks exists under a near-constant cover of clouds. It rains on this inconsequential town more than any other town in the northern continental U.S. It was from this town and its gloomy, omnipresent shade that my mother left with me when I was only a few months old. It was in this town that I'd been obliged to spend a month every summer until I was 14. That was the year I hesitantly put my foot down. These past 3 summers, my dad, Charlie, even outside his own comfort zone, decided to vacation with me in California for 2 weeks instead. It was to Forks that I now exiled myself, an action that I took with worry and curiosity. I have mixed emotions about Forks. I loved Phoenix. I loved the sun and the blistering heat. I loved the vigorous, sprawling city. Bella, my mom said to me the last of 1,000 times before I got on the plane, "You don't have to go." My mom looks like me, except with short hair and laugh lines. I felt a spasm of panic as I stared at her wide, childlike eyes. How could I leave my loving, erratic, harebrained mother to fend for herself? Ever since I was young, she had the knack to forget something. I love my mom, but I always wonder if her priorities were me or her own life. She's a free spirit who decided to try a uniform way of life with my dad, which didn't work out. Of course, she had Phil now, so the bills would most likely get paid. There would be food in the refrigerator, gas in her car, and someone to call when she got lost. But still, I really want to go. I lied. I'd always been a bad liar, but I'd been saying this lie so frequently lately that it sounded almost convincing now. I wonder if it was a lie or if I just wanted her to live her life without me in it. Would it be better? Maybe I just want to live my own life too. "Tell your dad, Charlie, I said hi." "I will." "I'll see you soon," she insisted. "You can come home whenever you want. I'll be there like lightning as soon as you need me." But I could see the sacrifice in her eyes behind the promise. "Don't worry about me. I'll be able to manage," I urged. "It'll be great and an experience." "I love you, Mom." She hugged me tightly for a minute, and then I got on the plane, and she was gone. But so was I. It's a 4-hour flight from Phoenix to Seattle, another hour in a small plane up to Port Angeles, and then an hour drive back down to Forks. But flying doesn't bother me. The hour in the car with Charlie, though, I was a little worried about. We rarely spoke, Conversation would work up to house myself or my mother, then awkward silence. The cycle would repeat for that hour. Charlie had really been fairly nice about the whole thing. He seemed genuinely pleased that I was coming to live with him for the first time, with any degree of permanence. He'd already gotten me registered for high school and was going to help me get a car. That genuinely made me perk up a little. He thought and did things for me that would be useful while I was there with him. As a kid, he would always encourage me by obtaining and reading books. They were always on different topics, never a subject pattern that held steady. I didn't mind. I liked to learn a little of everything. He even said that it was the little things that were always the most valuable. I had the thought that he wanted me to be an investigator with how much he told me about it. That was likely never to happen. I knew he was more than a little confused by my decision like my mother did. When I landed in Port Angeles, it was, of course, raining. I didn't see it as an omen, just unavoidable. I'd already said my goodbyes to the sun. Charlie was waiting for me with the cruiser. This I was expecting too. Charlie is Police Chief Swan to the good people of Forks. My primary motivation behind buying a car, despite the scarcity of my funds, was that I refused to be driven around town in a car with red and blue lights on top. Nothing slows down traffic like a cop. On top of that, it's embarrassing. Charlie gave me an awkward, one-armed hug when I stumbled my way off the plane. "It's good to see you, Bells," he said, smiling, as he automatically caught and steadied me. "You haven't changed much. How's Renee?" I thought these questions would start in the car. "Mom's fine. It's good to see you too, Dad." I wasn't allowed to call him Charlie to his face. My mom said that to me in a more stern fashion before leaving. Even though her judgment of my dad was always on display, doesn't mean mine was. I do love my dad. I guess I've been so used to my mom's attitude that it rubbed off on me after some time. I had only a few bags. Most of my Arizona clothes were too permeable for Washington. My mom and I had pooled our resources to supplement my winter wardrobe, but it was still scanty. It all fit into the trunk of the cruiser with no issue, kind of pathetic in this day and age for a girl to only carry so few clothes. Well, a quick trip to the shops in town would be good. "I found a good car for you. Really cheap," he announced when we were strapped in. "What kind of car?" I was surprised but suspicious of the way he said, "good car for you," as opposed to just good car. "Well, it's a truck, actually, a Chevy." "Where did you find it?" A Chevy was an actually decent vehicle. If it needed fixing, the parts would be easier to locate. Small towns don't really have many auto mechanics around. "Do you remember Billy Black down at La Push?" La Push is the tiny native reservation on the coast. "No." "He used to go fishing with us during the summer," Charlie prompted. That would explain why I didn't remember him. I do a good job of blocking painfully boring things from my memory. "He's in a wheelchair now," Charlie continued when I didn't respond. "So he can't drive anymore, and he offered to sell me his truck cheap." Well, I felt a little bad for thinking judgmentally about some guy who's possibly paralyzed. "What year is it?" I could see from his change of expression that this was the question he was hoping I wouldn't ask. "Well, Billy's done a lot of work on the engine. It's only a few years old, really." I hoped he didn't think so little of me as to believe I would give up that easily. At least from reading books about various random topics in the past years, cars were not my expertise, but a sliver of common knowledge. I read more about them knowing that I would need a car here. I knew that asking all these questions with a sound of confidence in my voice would soon make him respond more truthfully. "When did he buy it?" "He bought it in 1984, I think." "Did he buy it new?" "Well, no. I think it was new in the early 60s or late 50s at the earliest," he admitted sheepishly. "Dad, I only know the basics of cars. I wouldn't be able to fix it if anything went wrong, and I couldn't afford a mechanic." "Really, Bella? The thing runs great. They don't build them like that anymore." The thing, I thought to myself, it had possibilities as a nickname, at the very least. How cheap is cheap? After all, that was the part I didn't want to compromise on. Imagine getting stuck in a crappy car in the middle of the road, or even worse, near those roadside cliffs. I would never want to drive again if that happened. Well, honey, I kind of already bought it for you as a homecoming gift. Charlie peeked sideways at me with a hopeful expression. Wow. Free and possibly a great way to get money from the junkyard. You didn't need to do that, Dad. I was gonna buy myself a car. That was a half-truth. I would have still needed his help if I was going to get a car from somewhere else. I don't mind. I want you to be happy here. He was looking ahead at the road when he said this. Charlie wasn't comfortable with expressing his emotions out loud. I inherited that from him, but I've been trying to become better at expressing emotions around others. Although with him, I reverted back to the unimproved self. So I was looking straight ahead as I responded. That's really nice, Dad. Thanks. I really appreciate it. No need to add that my being happy in Forks is a large adjustment that I chose to face, hoping this doesn't backfire. He didn't need to suffer along with me. Well, now you're welcome, he mumbled, embarrassed by my thanks. We exchanged a few more comments on the weather, which was wet, and that was pretty much it for conversation. I knew how it would flow from the start. We stared out the windows in silence. It was beautiful, of course. I couldn't deny that. Everything was green. The trees, their trunks covered with moss, their branches hanging with a canopy of it, the ground covered with ferns. Even the air filtered down greenly through the leaves. It was too green. An alien planet, but it was a change in atmosphere that I couldn't quite imagine. Eventually, we made it to Charlie's. He still lived in the small, two-bedroom house that he'd bought with my mother in the early days of their marriage. Those were the only kind of days their marriage had, the early ones. There, parked on the street, in front of the house that never changed, was my new to me, truck. It was a faded red color with big, rounded fenders and a bulbous cab. To my intense surprise, I loved it. I didn't know if it would run, but I could see myself in it. Plus, it was one of those solid iron affairs that never gets damaged, the kind you see at the scene of an accident. Paint unscratched, surrounded by the pieces of the foreign car it had destroyed. Wow, Dad, I love it. Thanks. Now my horrific day tomorrow would be just that much less dreadful. I wouldn't be faced with the choice of either walking 2 miles in the rain to school or accepting a ride in the Chief's cruiser. I'm glad you like it, Charlie said gruffly, embarrassed again. It took only one trip to get all my stuff upstairs. I got the west bedroom that faced out over the front yard. The room was familiar. It had belonged to me since I was born. The wooden floor, the light blue walls, the peaked ceiling, the yellowed lace curtains around the window, the books that lined a shelf that was slightly covered in a thin layer of dust. These were all a part of my childhood. The only changes Charlie had ever made were switching the crib for a bed and adding a desk as I grew. The desk now held a second-hand computer with the phone line for the modem stapled along the floor to the nearest phone jack. It was somewhat old. We are in the year of 2007. I would have thought my cell phone would be enough. This was a stipulation from my mother so that we could stay in touch easily. I would have thought my cell phone would be enough. There was only one small bathroom at the top of the stairs, which I would have to share with Charlie. I was trying not to dwell too much on that fact. I think he knew I would need space. I wasn't a small child anymore. One of the best things about Charlie is he doesn't hover, but he does make sure I don't end up lost like my mom does. He left me alone to unpack and get settled, a feat that would have been altogether impossible for my mother. It was nice to be alone, not to have to force a smile and look pleased, a relief to stare dejectedly out the window at the sheeting rain and let just a few tears escape. I wasn't in the mood to go on a real crying jag. I would save that for bedtime when I would have to think about the coming morning. Forks High School had a frightening total of only 357, now 58 students. There were more than 700 people in my junior class alone back home. All of the kids here had grown up together. Their grandparents had been toddlers together. I would be the new girl from the big city. A curiosity. A freak. Maybe, if I looked like a girl from Phoenix should, I could work this to my advantage. I should be tan, sporty, blonde, a strong sports player, or a cheerleader. Perhaps all the things that go with living in the Valley of the Sun. Instead, I was pale, ivory-skinned, without even the excuse of blue eyes or red hair, despite the constant sunshine. I had always been slender, but soft-built. Obviously not an athlete. I didn't have the necessary hand-eye coordination to play sports without humiliating myself and harming both myself and anyone else who stood too close.